The Ballad of the Mountain Millionaires. Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed who was a poor mountaineer and barely kept his family fed. Then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground came a bubbling crude oil, that is, black gold, Texas tea. Well, the first thing you know, Jed is a millionaire. The kinfolks said that Jed must move away from there. They said California is the place you ought to be. So they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools and movie stars. The Beverly Hillbillies. In the grand city of Washington, District of Columbia, a man named Mr. Ernest John sat in a room when a knock came at the door. It was Jed Clampett. The man asked if Jed wanted to see him, and Jed replied that they had experienced a very bad experience. Mr. Ernest John was surprised to hear this happened in his town. Jed explained that it happened right after he bought the White House from an Indian friend named Sutton Hall. Mr. Ernest John nodded and called her the last of the District of Columbia Indians and a noble woman. Jed said he was not faulting her, but the trouble started when they took the deed over to give it to the president. Mr. Ernest John asked if they tried to see the president without telling him, and Jed said they did not want to bother him. They thought they would just drop in and hand him the Waukegan. Mr. Ernest John was confused until he remembered that Waukegan is the Indian word for deed. Things went wrong at the gate to the White House. Mr. Ernest John apologized especially for the sake of Ellie Mae, but the lady corrected him and said she was Granny. Mr. Ernest John apologized again, saying it was confusing because they both looked so young and radiant. Granny did not feel young or radiant because, when they tried to see the president, they were taken to a place called a psycho ward. Mr. Ernest John told them that place was reserved for very important visitors like themselves. Jed recollected that the people there thought they came from a foreign country called Paranoid. Granny added that they were called paranoics or schizophrenics. Mr. Ernest John called it a natural mistake because there are many of them in Washington. Jed was disappointed that after laying out $1 million to buy the White House for the president, the leader would not see them. Mr. Ernest John promised to go to the White House right now and speak to the chief. Granny asked him to tell the president and his wife that they would like to be invited for victuals in the Gold Room. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a man named Shifty was talking to his wife. He was trying to scrape off Indian paint so they could leave. He told her he had convinced the Clampetts that she owned the entire District of Columbia. He had already sold them one little parcel, which was the White House, for $1 million. Now he wanted to get another $1 million for the Capitol Building and the Washington Monument, and even Independence Hall in Philadelphia. His wife, Shifty, wanted to take the $2 million and fly to Guatemala. She told him to be sensible, but he insisted he was a proven success worth $2 million. Back at the hotel, Jed was looking for Ellie Mae to help with the housework. Granny said the poor girl could not do it all because there were 1,000 rooms in the hotel. Ellie Mae arrived with a surprise in a basket. Jed and Granny looked at the animals. Ellie Mae had named them all after presidents. There was George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt. Jed told her to take them back because they did not need more critters, but then Ellie Mae showed them a kitten named Jefferson Davis. Granny decided that one little Confederate kitten could stay. In another area, a man named Mr. Drysdale was looking for the chief. He found a man running a show and had to buy a ticket for 25 cents. The man was planning a big show with Ellie Mae and her animals, calling her the fearless leopard woman who would fight a mountain lion. Mr. Drysdale was shocked. He received a phone call from the bank saying Jed Clampett had written checks for $2 million made out to cash. Mr. Drysdale was told to go to Washington and bring the Clampetts home. Mr. Ernest John, who was actually Shifty, returned to the Clampetts. He told them a story about how the president was deeply moved by their generosity. He said there was a state of emergency because an Indian named Sitting Hawk had pitched her teepee on the grounds of the Capitol building and would not let anyone leave. Jed suggested that he buy the Capitol from her to save the country. They went to the Capitol and saw the lady. Shifty pretended to translate her Indian language. Jed offered $1 million, but the lady, through Shifty, asked for $2 million. Jed agreed to pay the $2 million to the committee acquiring Senate headquarters, which used the initials CASH. Shifty then offered to sell the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial as a set. He even mentioned the Pentagon and the Potomac River. He told his wife they now had $10 million. He ordered champagne and caviar to celebrate. However, Ellie Mae arrived at their room looking for a kitten and found Shifty and his wife. She thought they were the kindest people for taking in a poor old Indian woman. Jed and Granny arrived and praised Shifty as a living saint and one of nature's noblemen. Shifty felt a sudden change of heart because of their pure kindness. He told them he was a confidence man and that the woman was his wife, not an Indian princess. But Jed and Granny refused to believe anything bad about him. They believed he was being modest. Shifty was so overwhelmed by their goodness that he tried to give the $10 million back. Jed would not take it back, saying it belonged to the couple. Shifty and his wife were left stunned by the overwhelming honesty and heart of the Mountain family. Well, now it is time to say goodbye to Jed and all his kin. They would like to thank you folks for kindly dropping in. You are all invited back next week to this locality to have a heaping helping of their hospitality. Hillbilly, that is. Set a spell, take your shoes off. You all come back now. This has been a professional presentation of a story filled with heart, laughter, and the simple goodness of people who see the best in everyone they meet. The values of family and kindness remain the true gold, far more precious than any oil from the ground.